we're taking a look at the Poly EagleEye Cube. Nom, nom, nom. I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. Digging into the box, we come across the paperwork, all of your typical warnings and instructions and various languages. We have the typical sheet that shows you how to put the device together, how to mount the device, how to consider the positioning of the device with field of view considerations, and a QR code for further documentation at the bottom. If we dig into the protective foam of the device itself, and you'll see that it is a good thick layer to protect the device from damage in transit, we see that the device also has a plastic wrapping around it. Inside that, you will not see in this clip, but I have already removed a protective film covering the lens itself to protect it from scratching. The Poly EagleEye Cube has a 4K sensor with up to 5 times zoom. It can stream in 4K at 30 frames per second over USB and 1080p at 60 frames per second with HDCI. You'll notice there are 2 built-in microphones on each side of the device. And on the back, we've got a couple different ports here. We've got our USB-C port on the left with a little screw hole above it to allow you to hold the cable in place. There is also an Ethernet cable in the center. With USB, the EagleEye Cube boasts up to 121-degree field of view horizontally and 75-degree vertical field of view. There are various auto group framing modes. The bottom has a kind of grippy pad to allow it to sit on a flat surface, and a hole to allow you to mount it onto the mounting bracket that it came with. The mechanical tilt allows you to position the camera, whether on a surface or on the frame, in the optimal position. And then the privacy shade on-off switch is right underneath the camera at the bottom. You simply toggle it to the left or toggle it to the right to remove the privacy shade or keep it in place. Other features that the Cube comes with is a participant count capability, skin enhancement, wide dynamic range settings, and lens distortion correction with HDCI. Let's take a look at that privacy shade in action. There we go, privacy shade removed. If we slide it back over to the right, privacy shade is activated. Setting the device aside, we need to take a look at the other components that come in the box. On the front of the box, we'll get a view of the contents as they are listed. Wall mount, screw bag, and Ethernet cable, USB cable. We'll take all those out, each of them, and get a look here in a moment. Cables. More cables. The bracket itself. And the screws. Don't forget this silica gel packet. Looking at the bracket, you can see the 4 holes where this bracket gets mounted onto the wall. You can see these slots that are made in the center of the bracket that allows you to slide the wires into place so that they are neatly tucked behind the device and hidden out of sight. The bottom slit allows you to put the smaller screw into the bottom of the cube to hold it firmly onto the mount as it sits on the wall. Next up, we've got our Ethernet cable. Simply an Ethernet cable allows us to connect to the device over our network. Next up, the USB-A to USB-C. You see the USB-A side for plugging into your laptop, and the USB-C portion of the cable has a little pin at the top. That's where you connect and you screw that little pin into that hole we saw at the back of the device, keeping the USB-C side of the cable firmly in place. And there you go, the entire contents of the Poly EagleEye Cube box. And now we've got the EagleEye Cube camera setting beside our laptop. We've got Microsoft Teams up. The EagleEye Cube is plugged in USB-C to USB-A on the laptop itself, and we can just have the device sitting here, shifting the camera angle around. It is built to be able to sit just flat on a desk if we want to, mount it on the wall, or we optimize the angle and get it sitting on the laptop itself. And there we are. The Poly EagleEye Cube is perched atop of our laptop, and it does so nicely. It stays in a good position. We can come around to the side and see that it's sitting up there fine. Obviously, it is a little bit bigger than your average webcam. And so if you have a multi-monitor setup, you may want to put this on top of one of the monitors and then arrange your meetings accordingly. It will fit up there a little bit better, and you won't have the wiggliness or wobbliness of the monitor to factor in from your actual laptop. Now, let's say you don't want to use the EagleEye Cube as something that just props on top of your laptop or your monitor. Maybe you want to have it mounted to the wall using the mount that it ships with. It could be for being an IP camera. It could be to be in a stationary place on a wall where you can just walk up to it and plug your laptop in, and there you go. Whatever the case is, Poly ships the EagleEye Cube with this handy little mount, and it's pretty straightforward. We've got all the hardware sitting behind us. We simply put 4 screws into the wall. If you're putting it into a wall and you require anchors, it ships with anchors. In this case, we'll be using the handy pallet wood board behind us, so we don't need the anchors. And then you've got a strip along the bottom here that you'll use the very small bolt to hold the EagleEye Cube into place. Let's get started. Now, if I were to offer you one piece of advice here, I would simply recommend that you pre-drill holes and mark the places where you want to drill ahead of time. That way you save yourself just a bit of frustration and back and forth that this fool went through trying to get a simple 4-screw mount onto the wall. So that gets the EagleEye Cube mounted to the wall, which is all fine and good, but what about the cables? Now we need to take the camera down, plug the cables in, and then use the grooves that were provided inside of the bracket itself to loop the wires down beneath the camera and behind the wall. So we've now got the Poly EagleEye Cube mounted on our wall behind us here. We've got the wires put through the slots on the mounting device itself, going down under our wall and up through this hole here, USB-C to USB-A. We can now take the device and plug it right into our laptop. We see the Poly EagleEye Cube lighting up top, and before we even do anything with it, it's going to set up the device. We're going to get to the companion app in a second for managing the device settings, but we want to see if we can just use this right out of the box with Microsoft Teams. Now that we've plugged in the EagleEye Cube USB device to the laptop itself, we're going to go ahead and fire up a Teams meeting. The device set itself up, installed what it needed to when it was plugged in, plug and play, and if we say meet now, we've got no video coming through, and we see we've got a red light at the top of the camera up there. So if we look at our device settings, we do have EagleEye Cube selected down at the bottom. Whatever could be the problem? The problem could be that we need to turn the privacy shade off. Then we get a green light on the top of our camera, and we get an actual camera. And it is attempting to auto frame to adjust the picture accordingly. Let's go ahead and turn on our blur. It has found me automatically. We'll click join now. And there we go. We are joined in the meeting. We've got blur. I'm gonna walk over here a little bit and EagleEye Cube. There we go. It has found me and framed into me, optimized the image so I can be moving around, and as I do, the camera will adjust. And now, a brief demonstration of the auto framing capabilities in a real-life meeting scenario. All right, where are these guys? They are always late. Well, it's about time you showed up. And where exactly is Darth?
He's not here, supposed to be here.
Okay, well, he's not here. I guess we'll just have to stop and wait for him. Batman, what are you doing? Where is Darth Vader?
He said he couldn't make it. He sent me instead.
Oh, well, that's just great. The Emperor is going to be real happy about this. Yeah, nice try. That doesn't work with you. That's a Darth Vader thing.
Darn it.
So, in that last clip, we had a little bit of fun there, obviously. As you'll notice, the group framing did a really good job detecting when my guests joined me on screen. I think the masks may have thrown the software for a little bit of a loop, maybe delayed the framing a little bit, especially with Batman coming out of the scene, but it eventually picked up both and framed out to all of us. We can discuss a little bit of those presets as we go through the Poly Companion app here. When you first open the Poly Companion app, you're brought up to the device settings section if you've got a device connected. Otherwise, it prompts you to connect a device. With the device connected, we can come over here to firmware update. It'll let us know that, hey, here's your current version. Do you need to update from a local file? Probably not, because, hey, you're up to date. This is the date that we last checked. You can check again by clicking the refresh button. Going back over to device settings, once you see your device, you click on it, and we've got a number of settings that we can dive into here. This first status page is kind of our main general settings page, right? We've got all of the stuff we need to know about the model, the name, time, network information. If we were connected via Ethernet, we'd have an IP address in here. If you never need to provide the serial number or MAC address, that's in here as well. If we had a provisioning server, we can see that we were connected here, and then we see we're connected via USB. Coming on into camera controls, the first thing to point out here is that all these preset buttons and all your controls here are disabled by default when you first come into the app. And that is because auto framing is turned on by default. We'll show you where you can turn that off, as we did in order to access these settings, but it is turned off or turned on by default. So you actually have to go in there, turn it off to access all this stuff. Then you can go into your various presets, zoom in, zoom out, go over to the right, go over to the left, all that good stuff, and then save the settings for that particular preset so you can use it later. As you can see, there are a number of other settings that you can take advantage of: skin enhancement, wide dynamic range, participant count. And if you really know what you're doing with your camera settings, you can come in here and mess with your brightness, your contrast, your sharpness, your white balance, all that cool stuff. And that's stuff that I typically like messing with myself. So there you go, that's your camera controls and your presets for where the camera is going to be angled and how much it's going to be zoomed in. Coming on over to the admin settings, we got to put in the admin password. There are a wide number of settings in here. First off, we can change the name if we want to. I haven't done that, but if I did, the naming rules would tell me what is allowed as far as setting a new name. You can also change your NTP mode to be manual as well. We'll go ahead and leave that as auto. Camera tracking. This is where I mentioned that we had to turn tracking off in order to have our preset and camera controls. I like this being on though, so I'm going to go back to group framing. You'll notice that we can do speaker framing as well if we really want to track who is actively speaking and frame on into them. The group framing is what we had in our little example with my guests. Tracking speed, normal. I had this set to fast for that demo so that the tracking kicked in and did its job a little bit quicker for the quick demo that we did, but you can also set it to slow. Framing size. This is talking about how close to the participants of the who are being framed do we want to get the camera into. Do we want to zoom in all the way to like shoulders and make it really tight? Do we want to leave a lot of space and make it wide, or leave a little bit of space at medium? And I tend to leave that at medium. We can also decide what's the maximum amount that we're allowed to zoom in. And then the camera movement. When we actually do frame in, do we want it to be this fluid kind of zooming panning motion with the auto pan, or do we want to cut to the new frame? I like the fluid motion of auto pan best. Network settings, you've got Ethernet or none. If you were connected to an Ethernet here, then you can come in and either pull an IP via DHCP and set it statically, or you can do your also add in your DNS servers as well as a domain. Always a good idea to reset your password. You can configure a provisioning server if you want to. Certificates, you might need to connect to this as an IP camera, and you might want to do so securely with an SSL certificate. You can generate the CSR here, upload the certificate, and then connect to it securely. Next up, we can restart the system if we need to. We can factory reset the system. We can export the configuration for use elsewhere, or maybe just for safekeeping, and we can also import a configuration if we want to make sure we're going back and getting everything set back the way we had it from a previous build. And miscellaneous, you can have Windows 7 compatibility mode if you're still running Windows 7. There is the enable microphone option here as well. There are 2 mics built in, we saw that earlier. We can turn that on if we want to, and then enable stereo audio. Finally, on our diagnostics, there are a handful of things we can do here. Our audio test. I'm not going to do this now, as it says it can take several minutes to do, and I don't want to do that at the moment, but we can do an audio test to gauge where we're at there. We get some audio meters that we can take a look at. Turn on or off the camera parameters for the EagleEye Cube on the screen. And then lastly, we can go ahead and grab our logs if we ever need to do any downloading or providing that to support. I'm going to come back over to the camera control settings so that I can say goodbye and thank you for watching this video. Hope it was helpful. Hope it gave you the information you needed. Overall, I'd say that I don't typically weigh in on much of the devices that I'm providing an overview on, and I'm not going to do that too much here, but I will say there are some pretty impressive pieces of functionality and pretty cool capabilities built into this small little cube. And I'm looking forward to digging into it further and continuing to put it through the paces. Again, hope you found this helpful. If you did, please subscribe to the channel. And as always, share on retweet on Twitter, share on LinkedIn, any other social media platforms you want to splash it around on. I'm always grateful. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video.